What's up everybody, welcome back. So in this video we're going to set up our dual wielding, and to be honest, I've been looking up to making this video because it's going to be a long video and there's going to be a lot of copying and pasting involved, and there's not going to be a whole lot of interesting stuff going on except for the results, because the results are kind of cool, but making this is kind of boring. So if you follow this tutorial, I would recommend you just take a break somewhere in between, or just pause the video and continue another day or something like that, because like I said, it's quite boring stuff, but in the end the results are quite cool. So let's just dive into it and get this out of the way. So the first thing we need to do is create some pose animations for the weapons that we want to dual wield. And we should already have blend files for those weapons in our project, so this shouldn't be too hard. First thing we need to do is get Blender in here. And we need to grab one of the scenes with our weapon animations, so we have access to the pose animation. So I'm gonna open my rifle animation scene. And in here I should have the pose animation for it. So that's this one. And the first thing we need to do is create some kind of a base pose, and on top of that base pose we are going to make additive animations for the left and the right arm to dual wield them. So we need to get a second instance of Blender open. And in here I'm just going to add the Mr. Mannequin default template. So let me get rid of all of the default stuff, make sure my unit scale is set correctly, 0.01 at meters. And then I'm going to add the Mr. Mannequin template in here. And this is in the base pose, so that's what we want. And as long as we are in the pose mode, we can select everything with A on your keyboard. And then if you right click, you can copy the pose. So that only works inside of pose mode, so make sure that you are in pose mode when you do that. Then we can go back to the rifle animation scene. Let's select our skeleton in here, and we're also going to put this in pose mode. And then we can simply right click and paste our pose. So now we're in the default pose again, but this time we have our weapon sockets in the scene as well. So this is what we need as a base pose for our dual wield animations. So make sure that we save the file first, because every time that we are going to create a dual wield weapon, we need this file to copy and paste the pose. So I'm going to save it as my dual wield base pose. And there we have it. There's one thing I forgot in here, is we need to press A on the keyboard and keyframe this. So otherwise, if we move the timeline or open Blender again, it will not be in the correct pose. So right now we have keyframed frame 1, and we can get rid of frame 30. So this only needs to be a 1 frame animation, that's fine. And now we actually have the correct pose saved, and make sure that we save the blend file. So this is done, and now we can grab the second instance of Blender again and make sure that we grab the rifle scene. And we're going to create the dual wield animations for the rifle. So first let's get the pose mode in here, pose animation, sorry. And let's save it as a new file so we don't accidentally overwrite our old work. So I'm going to save it as my dual wield pose animation right, and save it. Make sure you also rename the actual animation name in here, so rifle pose dual wield right. And then we can create the actual animation. So go to the layout tab, select your skeleton, go into pose mode. And we need to make sure that our left arm goes into default pose. So we can simply go back to the other instance of Blender that we have in here. And we can drag the left arm and probably select all of your spine bones as well. You can deselect the IK bone. If you hold Ctrl and drag over it, it will deselect it. So make sure that everything from the arm at least is in there, the rest isn't that important, and then copy the pose. Go back to the rifle scene, we're going to right click and we're going to paste our pose. So now the arm is in the default pose, and that's what we want. To make sure that the spine is in the default pose, we can select all of the spine bones. And then if you hold Alt on your keyboard and press R, it will reset the rotation, and if you hold Alt and press T on your keyboard, it will reset the translation. So in this case they were already in the default pose, so that's fine. So this is the right hand animation that we are going to use for dual wielding. So now we need to make sure that we keyframe it, so select everything, press A on your keyboard and I to insert a keyframe, location, rotation. Let's get rid of the one at frame 30, we don't need that one. And now we are good to go, so file, save, and this is done. And now the last thing we need to do is create the animation for the left arm. So let's go, well, we can actually use this file, why not? So let's just save this again as a new file. And this is my rifle dual wield pose left. And make sure that you rename the actual animation as well, otherwise you will overwrite the other one. So dual wield left again. And now we need to make sure that we copy the right arm pose onto the left arm. So select your skeleton and go into pose mode. And then select your entire right arm. So deselect everything while holding Control that you don't want to make sure that you have the right arm entirely selected. Then right click and copy the pose, and then deselect everything. You can right click and paste the X flipped pose. And as you can see, this will mirror the pose on the other arm. So now we have a mirrored animation. The only thing left to do is line up the weapon socket on our left hand. So let's import the weapon in here. Let's go into the object mode and then file, import, FBX. And you simply want to import the FBX file from the weapon. So if you don't have it, you can just export it from Unreal and then import it in here again. So let me see, that should be this one. So in the object mode, I'm going to select the new weapon over here in the collection and then go to the constraints, so object constraints. And we're going to add an object constraint, copy transforms. The target is going to be our Unreal mannequin skeleton. And then for the bone, this is going to be our left weapon grip. And the mix is going to be before original. So now it is attached to our left hand socket, and we need to make sure that the rotation will line up with the other weapon. So that's why I didn't remove it. Now we can simply select the left hand weapon socket. So we need to select our skeleton and go into pose mode. And make sure that we find our left hand weapon socket. That's probably that one. The weapon grip left. And then if I go into the isometric view, I should be able to line this up quite nicely. So if you press shift while you're rotating or moving it around, you can make some fine adjustments. So something like this, and then move it a little bit as well. So something like this. So now it's lined up, and all we need to do is make sure that it's also lined up on the side. So let me disable X-ray. And as you can see, it needs to move a little bit to the right. So let's make sure that we have our weapon grip bone selected again. And let's move it a little bit over here. So this seems to match up quite nicely. So as you can see, by default the weapons are pretty close together. What I usually do is grab the right and the left arm and then go into the top view. And then if I grab the hand and hold Control, I can count how many clicks I'm putting it extra to the side, and then just make sure that you move the left and the right hand equally as far outside, so the weapon spread a little bit further. But for now we are just going to use this as a base pose. So at this point, make sure that you keyframe everything. So press A on your keyboard, I to add a location rotation keyframe. And then we can make sure that the right arm is going back into the default pose. So if we select the right arm in our base pose file, and we can copy the pose and go back to our rifle animation and paste it. So here we have our left hand pose. So again, make sure that we keyframe it right now. So location rotation keyframe. And we are ready to export this. So first let's make sure that we save it. And now we can go back into the object mode and select your mesh and skeleton. Go to export Mr. Mannequin FBX and make sure you're in the correct folder so you can find your animations. So we also need to export the right hand and the base pose. So I'm just going to open those and go to object mode and export them. Oh, not the normal FBX, but the Mr. Mannequin FBX export. And my dual wield base pose, so that's this one. No. Oh, come on. I'm trying to do this too quickly. And then I screw up. Okay, there we go. So we have the rifle poses set up, and we need to do the same thing for the pistol. So I'm going to do this off camera because this is going to take a long time and the rest of the video will take a while as well. So if you want to do more weapons, just follow the same steps for the other weapons and make sure that you have all of your animations exported when you move on to the next step, and I'll see you guys there. So now that we have the Blender stuff out of the way, let's import the animations into our Unreal project. So I have pistol and rifle animations and a base pose. So I'm simply going to drag them in here. And make sure that you import them on your arm skeleton. And import all, that should be good to go. So for the base pose we don't need to do anything, but for the left and right animations we're going to open them up and we're going to make sure that we set them to mesh space additive. So on the left side over here, the additive animation type, make sure that it's mesh space. Then the base pose type is going to be the selected animation frame. And then we need to make sure that we select our dual wield base pose over here as the base pose animation type. And then we should be good to go. So save this and do the same thing for all of the left and right animations. So again, mesh space, selected animation frame, and put it to the base pose dual wield animation, and do the same for the rifle. So you can also bulk edit these if you have more of these, but since we only have 4, this isn't too much work. So there we go. So the animations are set up. Let's create an input in the project settings that we're going to press when we want to dual wield. So let's go to our project settings, add an action mapping input, and I'm simply going to call this dual wield. And I'm going to use the X key on my keyboard. So there we go. And now for a little bit of extra setup, we're going to go to the weapons folder, and inside the weapon animation structure, so that's this one, we already have the pose animation over here, and we're going to add the left and the right pose animation as well. So let's create a new variable and call this dual wield pose anim right, and make sure that it's a animation sequence. So anim sequence, and do the same thing for the left animation. So dual wield pose anim left, and make sure that you plug in the correct animations in the data table. So we have this set up, we can close it down and now open up our data table with the weapons. And for the pistol over here, we can set the new poses. So the dual wield right pose, pistol pose dual right, and the left one pistol pose dual left. And do the same thing for the rifle. So rifle pose right and left over here. So that's set up and good to go. Let's dive into the animation blueprint. So let's start by setting up the animation blueprint. And as I already mentioned, there's going to be a lot of copying and pasting involved. But first we need to create two variables in here. So I'm going to create isDualWield. That's a boolean. And for the second one, I'm going to duplicate my pose animation enum and make sure that it's my pose animation enumeration left. So then we can go into the animation graph and we can simply disconnect all of the stuff that we already have. And we are going to keep that, but we're going to add a blend by bool. And make sure that we connect this to the false pose and plug in our isDualWield boolean over here. And now we need to set up the dual wielding branch. So we are going to start at the beginning. So let's copy this blend by poses node over here and paste it above here. Go to the asset browser and first you need to drag in your base pose dual wield animation, and from here you're going to drag off and apply a mesh space additive. So for the additive animation we're going to plug in this blend by enum, and then we can simply plug in the left and right animations. So all of the default stuff is going to be for our right arm, and all of the new animations and variables that we create, we're going to put an L behind them, and those are going to be for the left hand. So when we are in dual wield, all the normal stuff will refer to the right hand. So we are going to drag in our pistol pose right, and that's our additive animation, and then the rifle pose right as well. So we do not have a shotgun pose at this moment, so this is fine. And now we can duplicate this node and also do this for the left hand. So we can pretty much, now let's just duplicate this one, plug it in the additive one, and then we need to grab our left pose animation enumeration and make sure that we plug in our left hand animations. So the pistol and the rifle. And that's the base of our dual wield setup. And now we need to get all of our IK stuff in place as well. So we need to separate the left and the right hand for this. So first let's just grab all of it up till the local to component node. I'm going to copy it and paste it above here. So this is going to be the right hand first. So let me delete, or well, let's just disconnect. Well, we can delete it because we're going to copy it again. So delete the left hand copy bone and make sure that you keep the aim socket as well. So then we have the animation idle translation. We do not need ADS in dual wield, so we can get rid of this node and then connect everything back up. And for the rest, I think we should be pretty much good to go. So we're going to keep all of this stuff, the blend spaces. Then we have the left hand translation, and we are not going to use that in dual wield because it's a bit hard to rechamber a gun when you're already holding a gun in the other hand. And the finger rotation, I'm going to skip it for now as well. We can add that later. It's not really that important. And then at the end we have the two copy bone IK nodes, and we want to make sure that we only keep the one for the right arm in here. So that's our right arm setup, and then we're going to do the same for the left hand. So we can get rid of this one, and let's just copy all of this stuff again and paste it below here. So we're not going to worry about variables for now. Let's just get rid of the right hand copy bone and connect this up. Get rid of the ADS, connect it up, and then get rid of the left hand translation and the finger rotation as well for now. And make sure that you grab the left hand 2-bone IK to connect it back up here. And get rid of the right one. So let's just keep those here as a reminder. Now plug this in over here. And connect this one up over here. And plug the last one into the output post, or in the blend by bool, sorry. So this goes into the true pin of the blend by bool. So if we are dual wielding, we are using the top branch, and otherwise we are using the lower branch. And now we need to make sure that we have all of these variables in a left variation. So the easiest thing to do is just go on the left side over here and look for the variables and duplicate them. So we have the aim socket location, that's under the ADS stuff. I'm gonna Ctrl W and put an L behind it and do the same for the rotation. And then plug them in the graph as well. Make sure you don't forget. And do the same for all of the variables in the lower row over here. So the animation idle translation is in the animation section over here. Duplicate, left, duplicate, and left, and plug them in the graph. And I'm just going to work my way down the list. So we got that out of the way, and we have all of the left variables connected to the lower row of the animation graph in here. And we're going to go back to this later to make sure that all of the variables actually work, but we need to do... Oh, what's wrong? Oh, can't parse default, so nothing's really wrong. So we need to keep a certain order or I'm going to lose my mind. So we're going to keep it at this and move on to the next step. We need to set up our switch weapon character so it can also get the aim sockets for our left hand. So let's go to the viewport, select the character mesh, and we're going to add a component for the left hand weapon as well. So add a skeletal mesh component, and this is my first person weapon mesh left. So to make sure that we can attach it to the correct socket, we need to add the character mesh in here for a little while. So select your mesh and assign your character mesh. And it's not updating, so there we go, the character mesh. And let me get a gun in here, why not? So a pistol, and then we can select the proper parent socket. So that's our weapon socket left. Oh, weapon grip left, I'm sorry. And now that we have the grip in here, we can actually get rid of the meshes again. And it will keep the attached socket point, so that should work. And now let's get into the functions. So first do the update character function. We're gonna add a boolean in here and call this isLeftWeapon. So it tells us if we want to update the left or the right hand weapon. And then we can simply add a branch before the set skeletal mesh in here. And we're going to plug it into the new boolean input. So if this is the left weapon, we want to update the left hand weapon and otherwise the right hand. So if it's false, we're going to plug in the old one, and then we're going to copy and paste it and plug in our weapon mesh left for the true pin. And we have this function done. Now we need to update the get aim socket function as well. So for this, we are gonna actually use the foot IK bones on the skeleton. So you can also just add virtual bones or add new IK bones in Blender if you would like. Because I'm not using the foot bones on the skeleton, I simply just use those. So if I go into the skeleton in here, I have the IK foot root and IK foot left and right, and I'm going to use those to get the aim socket for the left hand and keep the normal IK bones for the right hand. So in here for the get new aim socket, first we want to add a branch in here as well and check if we want to get the left or the right hand aim socket. So get a branch, plug it in here and make sure that we call this something like is left weapon or is left hand or something like that. So if it's not left, then we can keep it the way it was. So let's just promote these to a local variable. And then we can store them over here. And then plug this into the return node and plug in the local variables. So that way we don't need to add extra return nodes. I once was told that was a bad habit, so I'm just gonna stick to it. So there we go. And now for the other one, we can copy and paste most of this stuff. So put it over here, connect it up to the true pin. And now we want to make sure that we get the aim socket location from the weapon, and then we're going to use the IK foot root bone over here. So instead of hand root, make sure that it's IK foot root. And for the weapon mesh, you want to replace it with the left hand weapon mesh. And all of the other stuff should be good to go. So then we can just plug this back into the return node, and this will return the proper aim socket for the left or the right hand. So that's the weapon character switch setup done as well. Let's dive into the actual character now and start making some changes in there. Open up your character blueprint, and first let's do some stuff in the viewport. So we're going to add the second weapon mesh. So select your arms mesh and again add a skeletal mesh component, and this is our first person gun left. And make sure that we attach it to our left weapon grip. So attach parent socket and look for your weapon grip left. And that should be good to go. No need to do anything else in here right now. So let's dive into the event graph and let's start setting up the dual wield event itself. So let me grab an empty spot over here. And first create a boolean for this. So create a new variable and call this is dual wield. And now we created the input at the beginning of the video, so we can simply get the input event dual wield. And we're gonna build off this. So first we're gonna add a branch to check if we are already dual wielding or not. So plug in your is dual wield boolean. And if we are, we're gonna go back to the normal animations, and if not, we're gonna start dual wielding. So first let's make sure that we set our booleans. So if it's true, we're gonna set it back to false and the other way around. Let's get a bit more room in here. So let me think, let's first do the false pin. Now let's do the true pin first, that's probably easier. So we're gonna go to our functions in here and we're gonna play a curve animation. And we're gonna play the lower animation for the right hand, because at this point we still have the normal animations playing. So we want to lower the normal weapon and then we want to raise our two separate weapons. So we're gonna play our lower animation for the current weapon. So that's our EW lower animation. Okay, I'm not sure why I have two of those. Let me check quickly. Find references. Okay, that's a bit weird. So I probably need to replace them into one. Although it does seem to work in game because this has default settings. Okay, I'm sorry about this, so let me quickly replace those so everything matches up again. So I need to get my current weapon lower animation in these events. And then I can simply get rid of this one. So there we go. Okay, so sorry, ignore that. So we're gonna play our curve lower animation in here, and we're gonna add a delay, but we're not gonna wait for the entire length. We're gonna subtract 0.1 seconds, so 0.1, and plug this into the delay. So when the animation is almost done, and then we're gonna do some stuff to get the right hand aim socket and things like that. So first we need to update the right hand animation because the pose for that will change as well. So I'm gonna get my weapon inventory names in here. And I'm gonna get the current weapon that I'm using. So get a copy of my current weapon index. And for this I want to get the data table information from the weapon animations. So get data table row name. No, not this one. Get data table row. This one. And we want to get our weapon animations table and plug in the row name over here. So from here we can get the new pose animation. So we can get the outer row and break the result. And if we dive into the struct over here, we have our pose animation right dual wield, and we have our weapon mesh. So we are simply gonna get our switch weapon character in here, which is a variable. So let me see. Over here. And for the switch weapon character, we're gonna update our animation pose. So update character pose. Plug this in the row found pin. And then for the character mesh, you want to make sure that you select your arms mesh. So I'm only using one, so I'm just hard coding this. And then plug in your weapon mesh and your pose animation right for the dual wield. And we need to make sure that this is updated. So we're going to add a tiny delay in here of 0.05 seconds, 0.05, thank you. And then we can get the new aim socket. So again, get your switch weapon character and then get new aim socket. And we want to get it for the right hand. So we can leave the boolean off and we can simply plug in the new results into our animation instance. So we have our animation instance stored in a variable over here, and we're going to drag off and set our aim socket location and rotation for the right hand. So location and rotation. So now the right hand pose is updated for dual wielding, and now we need to set up the left hand as well. And for the left hand, I'm going to create a separate function, or a custom event rather. So add custom event and call this setup left hand. And in here, we want to get our setup weapon animations. So we need to get to the functions in here. And obviously we do not have that function yet, so we need to make it. Is this something we're gonna do at this point? Let me double check. Let's just wait with this a little bit. So I'm gonna get back to this later. First we are going to do the upper branch in the dual wield section in here. and then we'll dive back into the other stuff. So at this point we are dual wielding, and we want to get rid of dual wield, so we want to lower the left and the right hand, and then we need to raise the normal animations. So for this we also need to update our play curve animation event. So let's do that first probably. So if we open up our play curve animation, we're gonna add a boolean as an input for the left hand. So add an input and call this is left hand. And we're going to use that to play the animations on the left hand, obviously. So let's make a little bit of room over here after setting the local variables. And we're going to add a branch in here. And if this is the left hand, then we're going to make a new branch. And for the false pin, we can just plug everything back in that we already had in here. And oh, my mouse is freaking out. So let's move this down a little bit. And we're gonna go back to creating the second branch later, because we need to have all kinds of functions in place as well. But now we at least have this set up, and we can continue on our dual wield branch over here. So we're gonna drag in our play curve animation, because we want to lower the left and the right hand first. So let's do left hand enabled, and then we're going to drag in our lower animation for the left hand. And we also do not have that yet, so we can just duplicate the CW lower animation and add an L behind it and plug this in over here. Duplicate this and do the same for the right hand. So we're going to lower the right hand as well. So disable is left hand and get your lower animation from the right hand and plug it in. And again, we're going to wait for the length of the animation minus 0.1 second. So plug in the same stuff over here. And we need to update the right hand socket again, so we can pretty much do the same thing as we did below. Let me double check. So there shouldn't be any difference. So we can grab this part and simply copy it over here. There we go. And then we want to remove the left gun mesh. So we're gonna simply drag in our first person gun left, and we're gonna set skeletal mesh to nothing. So set skeletal mesh, plug this in over here, and we can just leave the mesh empty, so our gun will disappear. And then we can set the animation instance dual wield variable. So if we drag in the animation instance, because we did already create that one, so drag over here and say set dual wield, and we're gonna set it to the same variable that's in the character. So we're simply gonna plug in that, so those match up again. And then we want to play the curve animation for the right hand to raise the normal animations again. So we're gonna drag in the play curve animation, plug it in here. And we want to play the reversed lower animation for the right hand. So get the CW lower, play reversed, and left hand is false. And then after that we only need to update the HUD information, but we need to create that stuff as well. So we're gonna keep it at this. So for the lower branch we can finish this, and we can call our setup left hand function. And then we can set the animation instance dual wield variable again. So copy that over here. And then we want to play the curve animations to raise the left and the right hand. So we can copy this one and paste it over here. And this will play the right hand raise animation. And then copy it again below here and make sure that you enable the left hand and plug in your left hand lower animation. So in reverse, so this will raise the weapon. And after that, all we need to do is the HUD stuff again, but we need to create it first. So for now, this should pretty much work, and we're gonna continue with something else. Let's continue by duplicating the animation timelines that we have, so we can play separate animations on the left hand. So we want to be able to play independent animations left and right. So we're simply going to copy everything. So first let's duplicate the variables, the animation idle translation rotation, animation walk translation rotation, and also the animation translation rotation. So I think I have those in a category over here, and I'm simply going to duplicate all of them and put an L behind them. So animation idle, animation walk, and then the animation translation and rotation. And now we need to duplicate the timelines as well. So I'm not sure if we can actually copy and paste them. Well, we can. So that saves a little bit of work, and then just rename this and put an L behind it for organization's sake. Compile and save. And then if we go into the event graph, make sure that you rename the timeline as well. So that's the animation idle timeline left. Animation idle timeline left. And we're gonna create the event as well. So play animation idle track left, custom event, play anim idle track left, and hook it up to the play button. And then we need to make sure we set our correct variables. So the animation idle left, translation and rotation, and plug them in just like you did with the other events. So split the struct pin, and then hook everything up to the update pin. So that should be good to go, and we can do the same for the other timelines as well. So duplicate it and make sure that you name it animation walk timeline left. And inside here, let's just rename the graphs as well. So put an L behind everything. And we can use those. So in the event graph, plug in the variables and create the custom event. So play animation walk track. Oh, really? Play animation walk. I can type, well, whatever, walk track left. Plug this into play and make sure that you set the correct variables again. So walk left, translation, rotation, update pin, and plug everything in. And then all we need to do is get the animation timeline as well. So that's my animation timeline left. We don't need a custom event for this because we're playing this in other ways, so we can simply plug in the variables, animation translation, rotation to the update pin. And then also duplicate this part, so on the unfinished pin make sure that you set everything back to 0. So that's the left translation and rotation. plug it in on finished and reset them. And then we also need to duplicate the event for the restart walk tracks. So the restart default tracks event or function. So I'm going to duplicate it and put an L behind it. And then simply replace the timeline components. So these are the components, and that's my idle timeline left. And then my walk timeline left as well. So that should match up again. And then we can call this left event over here. And that's good to go. So we can finish the play curve animation function now. So let's do that first. And let's open it up. So we already started the branch in here. And now we need to make sure that it works for the left side. So we're going to copy this stop node and we're going to stop the idle left and the walk left timeline. So plug both of them in here, walk timeline, idle timeline left. And we need to make sure that we reset the variables just like we did in here. So we're going to grab all of them and set them to 0, animation idle, and the animation walk. So really, animation walk. Go over here. And then we want to set the curves for the animation timeline that we want to play. So we're going to drag in our animation timeline left. That's the normal one. So animation timeline. Oh, really? This one. So I decided to name it left instead of L. So nice and confusing. So we're going to drag off here and set our vector curve. And we're going to set that to the translation curve. That's the local variable that's already in here. So local variable, get the local translation curve and plug it in here. And we need to make sure that we get the correct track name. So I'm not sure if we actually updated these tracks. I don't think we did. So that's the animation translation. And I'm going to put an L behind this. And that's also the name we need. So I'm just going to copy it. And do the same for the rotation. Put an L behind here. So go back to the play curve animation. And this is the translation track. So animation translation left. And then we want to set the rotation curve as well. So we can simply copy this part, paste it over here. Plug in the local variable for the rotation curve. And make sure you update the curve name. So animation rotation. And we have the timeline set up. Now make sure that we set the length mode to be the last keyframe. So set length mode and set it to the last keyframe. So it will match the length of the timeline. And then we want to make sure that we're playing it in the right direction. So we're going to grab our play reversed local variable and drop it on the boolean just like we did here. And then we're going to play the animation timeline left. So this one. And we want to play it from the start. So play from start if it's not reversed. And reverse from end if it is reversed. And plug it in over here. And we can get the timeline length. And if we store this in a local variable, we can keep the single return node. So I'm going to drag off here, promote to local variable, and that's my local, oh freaking. So that's my local timeline length. And make sure that we plug everything in correctly. And do the same thing over here. So get the timeline length, plug it into the animation and then store the local variable. Plug this in as well and plug the variable in the return node. So there we go. So now we should be able to play animations on the left and the right hand if we simply set the correct bool over here. Let's see, let's continue duplicating some functions in the event graph as well. Let's duplicate some of the functions that we need to set up our weapon, and let's start with the setup weapon animations. So I'm simply going to collect it and select it and duplicate it, put an L behind it, and then we're going to replace a whole bunch of variables, but we also need to create a whole bunch of variables. So let me quickly double check. So let's just go down the list and this should be fine. So we're gonna grab our pose animation enum and we need a left variant for that as well. So duplicate it in the list, add an L behind it and replace it in the graph. So for the switch weapon character, we want to make sure that we enable the is left weapon over here. And then for the pose animation, we want to grab our left hand dual wield pose. So because this is the left hand, this will only ever be dual wield. So we can simply connect this to here and it should be good to go. And then we need to set up a whole bunch of variables for the animations and things like that. So we can simply duplicate all of these and put an L behind them again. So the idle animation, I'm gonna duplicate it in here, put an L behind it and replace it. And make sure that you replace it everywhere. Then you need to make sure that you change the animation timeline to be the left animation timeline. So idle animation left, and plug this in here. So for the tracks, make sure you update the name as well and put an L behind them. Idle rotation and idle translation left. The length mode is fine, and then we need to play the animation track left. So we should have a separate function for that we just created. So play anim idle track left and replace it with the old one. And that's good to go. And simply move on to the walk animation. So again, we're going to duplicate this and put an L behind it. Replace all of the references in this function. And make sure that we update the timeline component as well. So that's our walking timeline left. And the animation track names. And make sure that we start playing the right track. So the animation walk track left. Play anim walk track. So I probably forgot to create the function. Oh, I messed up the name completely. So play anim walk track. Play anim this one. And get rid of the old one. There we go. And let's replace all of this stuff as well. So duplicate the variables. I already have a left lower animation because I just created that previously. So I can plug that in over here. And then for the blend spaces, we are going to duplicate them again. If I can find them, that is. Oh, those are variables on the animation instance, obviously, so we need to create them on there. So we might just as well get it out of the way so we do not forget. So let's go into the blend spaces and we need to get left variants from these variables as well. So duplicate them and put an L behind them. And now we can go back into our character and then we can replace them. So set blend space direction left for the translation. Then set the blend space direction rotation for the left side. And then do the turn rotation. So set blend space turn rotation left and the look rotation on the left side as well. And plug this in. Like this. And now we can simply plug in the stuff from the data table. That should work fine. So. And get rid of the old stuff. There we go. So that's updated as well, and now all we need is a crouch offset for the left weapon. So let's duplicate this and put an L behind it again and replace it over here. So we have the weapon animation setup done, and we should probably dive into the event graph and get the crouch offset out of the way. Oh really? So that's over here. Oh, freaking really. I did it again. So I need to replace these crouch offsets with the current weapon crouch offset. So this is not something you should do. This is something I messed up in the past, so nothing to worry about. There we go. And then I can get rid of this one. So, okay, so ignore that. So we have the crouch event over here, and we need to update it with the left hand crouch variable as well. So let me dive into my notes quickly. So we can simply add a crouch offset for the left hand. So crouch offset active, duplicate this one and put an L behind it again. And we're gonna set this one over here to the crouch offset for our left weapon. Then plug it in. And down below here, we simply need to set it back to 0 for the left side as well. And that should get the crouching out of the way. So that's all done. Let's continue with the functions for the left side. So we're gonna set up the weapon for the left hand. So duplicate the setup weapon and put a left behind it. And we need to change all of this stuff. So let me grab my notes in here quickly. So I'm gonna skip the HUD for now. We are gonna get back to that in a little bit. So let me just disconnect it and move it over to the side for now. And then we want to make sure over here we plug in the left gun component. So plug in your weapon left, connect this up to the row found pin again. And this should stay the way it was. So over here we have a little bit more of HUD stuff. So we're gonna ignore it for now. And simply gonna connect everything up like this. And now all we need to do is duplicate all of these variables in here to the left variant and make sure that you set the correct ones. So I'm simply gonna pause the video and get back to you once it's done. So just go down the list, create a left variant for each variable and plug them in over here. So we have the setup weapon left event done, or function, and I have replaced all the variables with the left variant and duplicated them in the list. So everything is left, and replace the gun component to be your left weapon component over here. And then this function is done as well. So now all we have left is the recoil function, and we need to duplicate a whole load of variables for this again. So we dive into the animation blueprint, and unfortunately all of the recoil variables that we have in here, we need to create left side variants for those. So let's just dive into it. We probably could just copy this setup recoil function and name it setup recoil left, and then we are going to replace all of these setters for the same variable on the left side. So again, I'm going to pause the video, duplicate all of the variables, put an L behind them, replace them, and rename the function. So see you back when I got that out of the way. So we got that out of the way. We have everything replaced with left in this function, and the function itself is left-sided as well. So right now I have a setup recoil and a setup recoil left. And one only has the left variant and the other one the right, so that's separated. Then we can go back into the first person character, and we're going to duplicate our setup recoil event in here and also call this left. And then we need to replace this node with the left one, so drag off the animation blueprint and then setup recoil left. And make sure that you plug in all the correct pins again. So again, I'm going to pause it and see you when that's done. So all of the pins replaced, we can get rid of the old node and make sure that everything is lined up again. And now that we have the setup weapon variables out of the way, we can go back into the event graph and finish our setup left hand event. So let's do that first. We created the empty custom event around here somewhere to set up the left hand. Let's go back in here. So first we need to set up the weapon animations left. So we're going to drag in this node, and then we can simply hook up our weapon inventory names and get the index from the left hand. So weapon index left. That's probably a variable that we don't have yet, so we can simply duplicate it over here. Current weapon index, duplicate it and put an L behind it. So let's drag it over here and plug it in. So we have the weapon animation set up, and this will also start playing the idle and the walking timelines and things like that. And then we want to get the animation instance in here and set the pose animation. So get the reference to the animation instance over here and set pose animation for the left side. And we can simply plug in the variable that we created earlier. Then we're going to add a tiny delay in here, so make this 0.05, 0.05, there we go. So after setting up the weapon animations, this will also update our switch weapon character, and we need a tiny delay after that to make sure all of the animations and poses have been updated. And if that's the case, then we can drag in our switch weapon character again over here. And we're gonna get our new aim socket for the left side. So make sure you enable isLeftWeapon, plug this in here. And we can store the return variables on the animation instance. So get the animation instance and set the aim socket for the left side, location and translation. There we go. And then all there's left to do in here is set up the weapon recoil. So and the weapon itself, by the way. So go to the functions that we just created and drag in your setup weapon left and setup recoil left and connect them up. Oh, really? And then we can simply get the weapon inventory names with the current index and plug it in here. Oh, come on. And we should be good to go. So let me see, I think this will be right about the time where we're gonna update the HUD as well. So first let's go to the add to weapon to inventory function. So add weapon to inventory, and we want to add a variable in here for the clip of our left weapon as well. So we're gonna duplicate the current weapon ammo clip variable in here, and we're gonna put an L behind it, and then we can simply get another one of these set array element nodes and connect everything up. And we're gonna set our current weapon left side clip out, and then make sure that you get the proper pins connected, so the proper index and then the ammo clip variable from the data table, and plug it in here. So now that's out of the way, we can go into the HUD widget and set up some information for the left hand. So let's grab our in-game HUD and let's add some information for the left hand weapon. So first I'm gonna drag this rechamber hint onto the right side over here. I'm not sure if we're actually gonna use it, but let's just keep it for now, why not? I'm gonna grab the vertical box with my information and I'm gonna simply duplicate it and move it over to the left side. And then rename the variables, so we want the weapon name left, and then the ammo clip left, the ammo stock left, and I'm also going to duplicate the rechamber hint just to be safe and plug it in over here and make sure that's my rechamber hint left. So let's dive into the event graph to set up all of this stuff. So first let's update our toggle rechamber hint function. So I am simply gonna add another boolean in here and call this is left hand. And depending on if it's the left hand, I'm gonna hide or show it. So let's just plug in this first. So if this is the left hand, then we want to update the left information. So we want to add a second branch in here and know if we want to show or hide the hand. So let me see. This left hand is false, so this should go in here. And if the visibility is false, it's hidden. And if it's true, so this should go like this. So is left hand is false. And then show the hint is true. So we're going to set the normal one to visible or hide it. And the other way around, we can copy and paste these over here and get a second branch. So this is for the left side. Do we want to hide or show it? And then simply plug in the rechamber hint left. So that's this one. And connect them up to both of these nodes. And the rechamber function is done. So for the weapon name, clip and ammo, I'm just gonna duplicate the events and change them in there. So I can call them separately. So update weapon name left, and that means we need to replace the weapon name left over here. And do the same thing, update ammo clip left. So replace the ammo clip. And the ammo stock left. And replace it with the left one. So all we need to do now is create an event to show or hide the left side information. So I'm going to go back into the graph, and by default I'm going to hide it. So my read chamber hint is hidden already, that's fine. And then I'm going to select the vertical box. And this vertical box needs to be a variable in this case. So I'm going to rename this and call this weapon info left. And then over here on the top I can select it to be a variable. Then make sure by default that it's hidden, so visibility hidden. And then we can compile and go back into the graph. And I'm going to create a new function for this and call this toggle weapon info left. And in here we need a branch to know if we want to hide or show it. So plug it in here, and I'm going to say something like set visible. And then we can simply drag in the weapon info left box. So that should be in the variables over here, weapon info left. And then set the visibility. So visibility true, then we want it visible, and false we want it hidden. And plug it in both nodes. And that's done already. So now we can update the HUD for the left side as well. So let's go back into the character blueprint and make sure that we plug in all of the calls to the HUD. So let me see. First of all, in the dual wield function that we created, so the input action dual wield, and we need to toggle hiding and showing the information in there. So at the end of the branch over here, we can simply drag in our in-game HUD, and we want to toggle the weapon info on the left side. And in this case we are starting to dual wield. No, we are ending the dual wield, so we want to hide it. So set visible is false. And then below here we're gonna set the visibility true. And now let me see, I think in the setup weapon events we need to call them as well. So let me dive into my notes quickly and I'll be back in a sec. So in our setup weapon left event we actually had some calls to the HUD that we need to correct. So let's open our setup weapon left, and over here we want to set the weapon name for the left side. So set weapon name left, no update. And make sure that you replace the node. And over here we also need to update the clip count for the weapon, so we can get the HUD in here again and change this to the left side. So I already had the HUD, so update ammo stock left and update clip left. And then make sure that you also replace the arrays in here. So we need the ammo clip left array over here. So the ammo stock is the same one. And then for the weapon index, we do need the left weapon index. And then we can get rid of this stuff and plug this into the new nodes. And reconnect everything back up. So now it will show the ammo information on the HUD with the correct weapon name on the left side as well. So let's create an input in the project settings so we can switch weapons on the other hand as well. So let's go to our project settings and then to the inputs. And I'm going to add a switch weapon for the other hand, so I'm going to add a new action mapping and call this switch weapon left. And since this is the left side, I'm gonna make this the Q key. And then I'm gonna reset this one to be my E key. But you can configure it however you want. So we have a new switch weapon event for the left side. Let's dive back into the character and we're gonna set up this event. So go to the event graph and we need to find our switch weapon event. So that's fire weapon. That was the dual wield. Reloading. So it's probably over here, switch weapon. So we're simply gonna grab this entire event and let's make a little bit of room. So we want to get our new switch weapon event for the left side. And then we are simply gonna replace this stuff. So let's just copy all of it. Oh, freaking really. And paste it over here and then just walk through it to see what we need to replace. Excuse me. So I'm gonna grab the event in my notes as well. That might help. You never know. So the first thing we want to do in here, so why is this disconnected? I'm not even sure. Okay, so forget about that. So we're gonna add a branch in here and make sure that we are dual wielding. So if we are not dual wielding, we don't want to mess with the inventory on the left side and we don't need to. So we're not gonna do anything if we are not dual wielding. And if we are, we're gonna continue. Make sure this is plugged in as well. So then we need to get the current weapon index from the left weapon. And for the inventory size, that's fine. So then we can change the nodes in here as well. So we want to switch the left weapon index in this case. So over here we have the play curve animation and we can simply enable the left hand side, but we do need to replace the lower animation with the left one. So current weapon lower animation left. Then for the setup weapon animations, we can also simply replace the function. Oh, freak. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I got a little interruption. So let's get our setup weapon animations left and replace it over here. And make sure we get the weapon inventory left again, or the index left. And plug in the correct name, get rid of the old one. There we go. So as you might have guessed, we want to replace the pose animation with the left one as well. So this is all just replacing stuff, copying and replacing. So it gets a little bit boring, but in the end the result is pretty cool. So just work your way through it. So here we go, this is done. Now we need to set up the left weapon and the left recoil. So recoil left, weapon left, and replace everything again. And this one as well. And move them down, there we go. So we want to get the left hand so we can enable the boolean over here. And then all we need to do is replace these variables for the left one on the animation blueprint. So set aim socket left, the location and the rotation. And then for the curve animation, we can simply enable the left hand boolean and replace the animation for the left side variant as well. So lower animation left. There we go. And plug it in here. And this should be good to go for the left hand weapon switching. So that's done as well. Let me see where we are going to continue. So at this point, let's dive back into the animation blueprint and let's update some functions in there as well, so we can manage the left side animations. So for the update blend space curves function, we're gonna add the left side stuff in here. But first I am going to get rid of this target translation variable because that's really kind of unnecessary. So I'm gonna delete it over here, and just plug this in directly. And do the same thing over here for the target rotation. So I'm just gonna get rid of the target rotation, get rid of this, and simply make a rotator here. And then we can plug it in the target. And that's good to go. And do the same thing over here. So target rotation, we don't need it. And we're gonna replace the local variable like this. And the last one, there we go. So now we can get rid of the local variable. Both of them, we don't need those. There we go. So now let's update this for our dual wield stuff. So let's disconnect the branch over here, and we're gonna add a branch, and we're gonna check if we are dual wielding or not. So we should have a variable for that. And if it's false, we are simply gonna end the function here. And if it's true, then we can pretty much duplicate all of the stuff that we already have. So let's grab all of this and let's paste it below here. And then we need to update all of this for our left side. So connect up the true pin over here to the first setter, and then we need to duplicate our variables for the blend spaces. So the direction rotation and the direction translation and the 3 rotation variables, we need a left side variance for those. Oh, that name already exists, so let's just make it left, why not? There we go, and then we have the turn rotation left and the look rotation left. So over here, the blend space direction translation, that's going to be the left one, and replace it over here as well. And then I don't think we really need to do anything. Oh, of course we do. We need to change the actual curve in here as well. So the blend space on the left side can be different from the blend space on the right side. And then move on to the rotation. So replace the curve over here. And then set the rotation left twice, like this. And then move on to the turning, so replace the actual curve variable and then the rotators as well. And the last one is the look rotation. There we go. And then we can go back to our return node over here. So that should get the blend spaces out of the way. And let's move on. So this is just some default parameter stuff. That's nothing to worry about. So we can move on to the animation idle track. And we're simply going to add the left side in here as well. So again, we can disconnect it at the end and add a branch in here to check if we are dual wielding or not. So let's grab our dual wield variable in here. There we go. And then we need to duplicate this stuff and make sure that we set it up for the left side. So we should have those variables already because we created them when we worked in the animation graph. So let me see. There's a category for them, curve animations. There we go. So connect this back up to the character. Oh, that's not true because we want to get the left side variance. So we want to get the animation idle translation left. And we also want to get the crouch offset. So for the left side, crouch offset active left. And we're gonna plug those in here. Get rid of the right side. And then for the animation idle translation, we are gonna replace that to the left one. So animation idle translation. Oh, freaking really. You gotta be... Okay, sorry, that's my fault. Animation idle translation left, so that should work. Stay calm. And then make sure that you plug this one into the character as well. And you connect the execution pin to the false true pin, sorry, and the false pin goes to the return node. So if we are not dual wielding, we don't have to do anything. If we are, we need to get the left side stuff. So this is updated to left, and then we need to get the animation idle rotation left. So get animation idle rotation left, replace it over here, and replace the variable as well. And then hook this back up to the return node, and that's done. So move on to the last function, and that's the walk translation. And again, this is similar to the other ones, so we're gonna add a branch in here, check if we are dual wielding or not. And if we are, we're gonna add the left stuff. If it's false, we're gonna return. Then simply copy it and paste it over here. Now we want to get the animation walk translation for the left side. And replace the variables in here as well. So walk translation left, walk translation left, hook the execution pin up to the true pin. Make sure you connect up the character pin over here as well. So here we want to get the walk rotation left and plug it in, and then replace the variables in the animation graph themselves. And hook this back up to the return node over here, and that's done as well. So we could continue with the recoil maybe. Let me double check my notes and get back to you. Let's get the recoil functions out of the way in the animation event graph. So we need to duplicate these events for the left side again. So first I'm going to do the stop recoil. That's really simple. So add a custom event, stop apply recoil for the left side. If I could still type. And then we need to duplicate the apply recoil boolean as well. And add an L behind it. So we can set it over here back to false. And that's done. Now let's duplicate the other event as well. So let's just grab the entire event and paste it over here. So this is going to be my apply weapon recoil left, or fire weapon is what it's used to be called. So apply recoil left. Apply weapon recoil. Okay. There we go. So first of all, recoil enable clamps, replace it for the left variant, and then we need to replace all of the variables in here as well. So we have the translation clamps and the rotation clamps, and these are the normal ones. So recoil minimum, maximum for X, Y, and Z. And then the rotation ones as well. So simply just replace them with their left side variant. There we go. So the current recoil, we already have a left variant as well, so we can plug it in here. Then we need to replace the clamps in here for the left side clamps. So the translation clamps. And the rotation clamps as well. So the target recoil, we need to duplicate the variable. So let's duplicate our target recoil and call it target recoil left. And we can set it over here if we split the struct pins. So split the location and rotation again and simply move over the pins. And do the same thing for the node below here. Oh, really? So that's my rotation roll. There we go. And now all we need to replace here is the apply recoil left. So let's drag it on top of here, and that should work. So now we need to go to the update blueprint animation function over here. Let's see, this one. And over here we need to duplicate all of the recoil stuff again and make sure we do it for the left side as well. So I'm gonna start at the apply recoil boolean over here and simply grab everything. Except for the left hand translation and the finger rotation stuff at the end. So we do not need that. So only all of the recoil stuff. And let's paste it down below here. So let's hook it up to the execution first, so we don't forget. Make sure you do not have any loose ends over here from previous branches maybe, so that it's connected up all the way. Then we need to apply recoil left over here, and we want to get our current recoil left, but we do have it. So get the current recoil left and drag it on here. And the target recoil we just created, so we can drag it on here as well. And then this one, current recoil again, the empty transform, we don't need to do anything with it, that's fine. So then we want to get our current recoil again here and set it over here. So simply replace all of them with their left variants, and then there's the interp speeds left. So we have the interp 0 for the left side and the interp apply for the left side. And do make sure that you also connect up your delta time branch. So hook it up to one of the delta time getters. And that should work. So we have the recoil set up in the blueprints as well. So I think it's a matter of duplicating some functions in the character, and then we should be pretty much good to go, finally. So let's get back to the character. Let's start setting up the fire weapon and ADS stuff in our character. So let's open up our character and go to your fire weapon event. And let's disconnect the input event. We are going to create custom events for this. So let's create a custom event and call this fire weapon right. And then a second custom event to stop fire weapon right. And we can hook them up to the existing events. So then we need to go to our ADS function, and I'm just going to drag it off here. So in here we're going to add a branch to see if we are dual wielding, and if we are dual wielding we want to fire a weapon, and otherwise we want to ADS. So let's get two branches in here, and let's get our is dual wield boolean. Oh, that actually works, nice, okay. So we can plug it in like this. So if we are not dual wielding, then we are just want to set our ADS stuff. And if we are dual wielding, we're going to call our fire weapon right event. So fire weapon right and stop fire weapon right. So that should fix our right mouse button. And then for the fire weapon event itself, we can check if we are dual wielding as well. And then we want to fire the left or the right weapon. So let's create two custom events again. And call the first one fire weapon left. And then we got a stop fire weapon left. Something like this. And then we're going to add two branches here again for the input event to see which weapon we want to fire. So we're grabbing our dual wield boolean and plug it in here. So if we are not dual wielding, then we want to fire our normal right hand weapon. So drag it off here and call fire weapon right. And otherwise we want to stop fire weapon right. And do the same thing for the left weapon if we are dual wielding. So fire weapon left. And stop fire weapon left. There we go. So now we need to duplicate our fire weapon event for the left side. So we need a little bit of room for that. So let's drag it down here and let's grab all of the fire weapon stuff. So I think that should be everything, and we're going to copy that down here. And then we're just going to walk through it and see what we need to replace. So move it over to this side a little bit. So we do need to duplicate some variables again. And the first one is the fire button pressed for the left side, and we need the is firing left as well. So let's find those variables and let's duplicate them. Fire button pressed for the left side, and the current weapon is firing left. And we also need a burst fire count for our left weapon, and we probably don't have that yet, so let's look for the burst fire count over here. So not the current weapon variable, but the normal one, and we're going to duplicate that and call that left as well. So fire button pressed, we can simply replace those in here. Then we want to get the ammo clip left, and we also want to get our weapon index left with our weapon is firing left. So we need to replace the burst count in here for the left one, and the booleans as well. So fire button pressed left is firing left, and the burst fire count left again over here. Ammo type, we also have a left side variant for that, so let's grab it in here. Ammo type left. We're going to update the bullet trace and projectile functions in a little bit. So for the recoil, we probably want to create a left side event. So let me just dive into my notes quickly. Yeah, let's just create a left side event. So I'm going to create a custom event over here. Apply recoil left. And we're going to replace this node with our apply recoil left. And make sure everything is connected in here. And then we do need the recoil time for the left weapon. So we need to duplicate. Oh, we already did, so we don't need to duplicate it. Then we can simply drag in our animation instance. So let's look for that over here. Which weapon character animation? This one. And we want to call our apply recoil for the left side. So apply weapon recoil left. And then we're going to wait for the recoil time for the current weapon left. So that's also in the list over here somewhere. We just had it. Come on. Here it is. And then we can simply call the stop apply recoil for the left side. There we go. So take bullet from clip, we're gonna get back to that in a little bit. For the curve animation, we can simply enable the left side over here and drag in the current weapon fire animation for the left weapon. Fire sound, we can replace that for the left side as well. And then all of this stuff is simply replaceable. So we have the muzzle socket left. Okay, I screwed up something over here. I didn't even know what I was doing. So we want to get the muzzle flash left. There we go. For the first person gun, we want to replace the component with the left weapon. And then there's the muzzle socket left. We want to plug it in here. So for the animation slide translation, we do have that variable, so we can drag it on here. We do not actually have any finger animation stuff set up at this point, so I'm just gonna get rid of it for now. And we probably want to get rid of this as well, by the way, because this is for the right side and those will interfere. So we could have a look at setting those up later. So the fire time, we need to replace this with the left side. And then obviously this stuff as well. So we already have it over here and we can copy and paste it. So the ammo clip left with the current weapon index left. And then let's continue by replacing our weapon type. So that should be in here as well. And now let's pick one of the branches. So let's start with the rechamber branch. So replace all of this stuff as well. Rechamber left. So for the in-game HUD, we want to call our oh, that's the same function. We can simply enable the boolean for the left hand over here. We're going to get rid of the animation hand translation for now, and then plug in the rechamber time for the left weapon. Get rid of this one and enable the left hand boolean over here. And then we want to replace these ones with the left side variants. And that should be good to go. Oh, that's my crouch button pressed. Oh, really? So let me rename that. There we go. So again, we need to get the fire button pressed in here. And then all we have is the burst count branch left. So we want to get the burst count left. and compare that to the weapon burst count. So that's the weapon burst count left over here. And then we need the current weapon burst delay left, weapon type left, and reset our left burst count. Check the left fire button, and that should be good to go. So let's dive into the take bullet from clip function and see what we need to change in here. So I'm gonna add a branch in here at the front, and then I'm gonna make a input from that to see if we are firing our left weapon or not. So is left weapon, and if that's false, then we can simply connect this back up over here. So this was the right weapon, so we can keep it like this. And then for the left side, we want to duplicate this stuff and make sure that we do it for the left side. So get all of this stuff in here. And then simply get the ammo clip left, weapon index left, and replace the other variables as well. So ammo clip left, yeah, that is correct, sorry. So ammo clip left, weapon index left, and we want to update the clip left, so update ammo clip left, and that should be all we need to do in here. There we go. So now we can go back to the event graph, and we can simply enable the left hand boolean over here, and that should work. So next we're going to take a look at the bullet trace and projectile functions. Let's start with the fire bullet trace. Let's open this up, and we need some new local variables in here. So let's start by creating those. The first one is going to be the weapon component, and that's a local variable. So that's going to be a skeletal mesh. We can make it a scene component probably. Why not? So look for scene component. And then we need the local shotgun spread and local shotgun shot count. So local shotgun spread. And the spread is going to be a float. And then the local shotgun shot count. And that's an integer. And we also want a boolean in here to see if we are firing our left weapon or not. So local is left weapon, and that's a boolean. So the first thing we want to do is get the input node in here, and we're gonna add a branch and check if this is our left weapon or not. So we also want to set the local variable immediately, so drag it in here, plug it into the input pin, and connect it up to the branch as well. So we want to know if this is our left weapon. And after we did that, we can set the scene component. So we're going to drag in a setter for the weapon component and plug them in. And then we want to set the correct weapon component. So if it's left, we're going to drag in our first person weapon left and connect it up. And otherwise, it's our normal one and connect that up. After that, we want to get our check for the shotgun branch in here connected up. And then we need a little bit more room again, so I'm gonna move this over to here. And we're gonna add a second branch after this, connect the true pin to this branch, and we want to know if this is our left weapon. And According to that, we can set the correct spread values for the shotgun. So we're gonna drag in our local shotgun spread and our local shotgun shot count. And if it's the left weapon, we're gonna set it to our left weapon variables, so we can grab them from the list. Shotgun spread left, and the shotgun shot count left. And then we can do the same thing for the right hand side and grab the right hand variables, so the shotgun spread normal and the shotgun shot count. There we go. So then we can connect both of these back up to the original branch over here. And then we need to make sure that we change this gun component to be our local variable for the weapon component. So just drag that on top of here to replace that one. And we want to change the current weapon shotgun spread to the local shotgun spread variable in here. And then for the rest, I think we should be good to go. So local fired shots, those are local, but we need to get the local variable for the shot count in here. So get your local shotgun shot count and replace it in this branch. And then we can move on to the lower branch. And in here, pretty much all we need to do is replace the weapon component. And that should work already. So that's good to go. Now we're going to go into our bullet trace hit event. And for the bullet trace hit, we also want to get a branch in here to check if this is our left weapon again. So we're going to create local variables. And again, this is going to be local is left weapon. And the second one is our local bullet penetration. And the last one is an integer. So we can get the setter for the local weapon and drag it onto the input pin, input node, so we get the variable in here. And then we want to add a branch in here and connect it up. So we can set the proper bullet penetration. So grab your local bullet penetration setter and paste it in here twice. So if this is the left hand, we want to get the bullet penetration left. And otherwise the normal one, so bullet penetration here. And we can connect this back up to the original pins. And then all we need to do, let me see, is go to the end over here. And we are checking for the current weapon bullet penetration. And we want to replace it with the local bullet penetration. And then we should be pretty much good to go in here. So let's continue in here by double clicking your play impact fx event. And for the play impact fx, we're also gonna add a is left weapon to it. So is left weapon. And then go back into your bullet trace hit event, and we can simply plug in the is left weapon local variable into the calls. So over here and over here. So then we know what impact fx we need to play. So let's go back to the play impact fx over here. And for this, we are simply gonna create, we already have an impact fx variable. That's nice. So then we can simply add a second boolean in here. So if this is the enemy, that's true. Then we want to know if this is the left or the right hand. So if it's the right hand, we want to get the normal impact enemy fx, and if it's the left hand, we want to get the impact fx enemy left. So we need to look for that in the list again. Fire sound, muzzle socket. I'm not even sure if we already have those variables. Impact FX enemy. Okay, back in a sec. Okay, we can simply create the variables for the impact FX on the left side. And then we need to make sure that we set them as well in a little bit. So impact FX enemy and impact FX normal, and make both of those left variants. So now we can set the impact FX enemy left over here. Then we're going to add a second branch over here. So if we did not hit an enemy, then we want to play the normal impact FX. So this is for the right hand. And let's do the same thing for the left hand. There we go. So now I discovered that we are not actually setting our impact FX anywhere. So we do not have this stored in a data table or anything. So that's probably something we want to fix. I'm sorry. What the? Okay, just a sec. Okay, so it's moaning about a bunch of local variables, and it turns out I need to refresh the nodes to get rid of these errors. So I'm not really sure what's going on. But in case you have the same problem, you need to right click and refresh the nodes, and in that case it all works again. So maybe because we duplicated the variables, I'm not sure, but okay, that's fixed. So I was talking about the impact FX. So if we go to our weapon data table for the info table, then we can simply add the impact FX in here. So then we need to open up our structure and add new variables. So add 2 of them, and that's my impact FX and my impact FX enemy. And both of those are particle systems. There we go. So then save and close it down. Then if we go into our weapon info table, we can actually specify the FX that we want to use. So I'm just gonna keep it simple. This is all taking way too long, so I'm just gonna plug in the impact FX metal for all of them. So then at least we know something is happening. And if that's done, then we can go back into our first person character, and we want to go into our setup weapon event. So over here we break the struct, and we can simply set the variables. So set the impact FX for the right hand weapon. There we go, and do the same thing for the left hand. And this time drag in the left variables. Oh. So now the impact FX should actually do something. Oh, really? And we got that out of the way as well. So let me double check and see what else we need to update. So back in our event graph, I think we only have the reload event and the fire projectile function left. So we're getting close to the end. Hold on a little bit longer. So one thing we need to do for the fire weapon events, in the fire weapon event for the left hand over here, we need to make sure that for the fire bullet trace we enable the left weapon bool. So that should be good to go. Then let's open the fire projectile function, and first we need to create some local variables in here again. So let's start by doing that. The first thing we want is the weapon component again, so local weapon component, and that's our scene component. Then we need the local projectile class, so local projectile class, and this is an actor class reference, so look for actor and then select the class reference. Then we need the local shotgun spread, and that's a float, and the local shotgun shot count, and this one is a integer. So that should be all we need. Then we can get our input in here, and we're gonna add a branch. And first we're gonna check again if this is our left weapon, so drag it on the input node and make this is left weapon. So then we can set our weapon component, so drag in the local variable and make sure that we set the correct weapon component for the left or the right weapon. So if it's true, it's our gun left, and if it's false, it's our normal gun. And then we also want to set the projectile class in here, so grab a setter for that as well. And we can simply connect it up to the weapon variable, so we have the current weapon projectile class for the left side, which is the top one, and the projectile class for the normal weapon, and that's the lower one. Then we can connect this back up to our is shotgun branch, like so. And for the shotgun, we need to know if this is a left or a right hand. So we're gonna add a branch here again, and let's connect it up. And plug this into the local variable. Oh, we didn't create that, so we can plug it into the input pin, that's fine. So just plug them in like this. So if this is our left hand, then we want to set the left hand shotgun spread and the left hand shotgun shot count. So we need a little bit more room. So this is true. Connect this up over here. Get your left hand shotgun shot count. And then your left hand shotgun spread. And otherwise it's our right hand, obviously. So we're gonna get the normal variables. So that's our left hand, right hand shotgun shot count, and the shotgun spread. So then we can hook this all up again over here. For the FP gun, we want to change it with our local weapon component again, so drag that on top of here. For the current weapon projectile class, that's going to be our local variable for the projectile class. And then all we need to do here is get the local shotgun shot count and plug that in here. And that's good to go for the shotgun branch. So then we need to get to the branch down below, and over here we also want to get our weapon component plugged in over here. Get your local projectile class, plug it into the spawn actor, and let's see, I'm not really sure what this was for. So this is to set our bullet penetration for projectiles. So we kind of want to know if this is our left or our right hand then. So let's create another branch in here and let's connect it up like this. So we're going to plug this into the isLeft weapon pin, and then we're going to duplicate the local variable, call this local bullet penetration, and we're going to set this to our left or our right hand variable in here. So if it's true, then that's my left hand bullet penetration, and otherwise it's the normal one. And then we can connect this back up and plug in our local bullet penetration over here. So that should be good to go. And there we have the errors again. So I'm gonna refresh the nodes and I'll get back to you. So with all of the nodes refreshed in the fire projectile function, I'm back in the event graph, and for the fire weapon left function, you want to enable the boolean for the fire projectile, so we're actually firing it from the left weapon. And now I think all we need to do is get the reload event out of the way, so let's dive into that. So here we have the normal reload event, and we can just keep this the way it was, and I'm gonna move all the way to the end, and first I'm gonna add a branch in here, and I want to know if I'm dual wielding or not, so grab my dual wield boolean, and then I also want to know if my current weapon index for the left hand is the same as for the right hand. So I'm gonna grab my current weapon index normal and compare this to the left one. So current weapon index left. And if this is true, then I also need to update the ammo stock for the left hand because the ammo value changed. So then I'm gonna plug this back in here, and I can simply get the HUD over here and update my ammo stock left. So ammo stock left. We're going to connect this up to the true pin, and we can get the value from over here. So if this is false, then we're going to add another branch, and we're going to check if we are dual wielding again, because we may not be dual wielding the same weapon, but we can still dual wield another weapon. So let's get the dual wield branch boolean in here again. And then we simply want to check if we can maybe reload this weapon. So we can pretty much copy all of the stuff we already had and make sure that we replace it for the left side. One thing I'm gonna do first is grab the execution pin here and make sure that you connect it up to the false pin all the way at the beginning here. So that means if we cannot reload the right hand, maybe we can reload the left hand. So we're gonna check both. So make sure you connect it up over here as well. And then I'm simply gonna copy the entire function over here. So grab all of this stuff from the first branch up to the update ammo stock, and I'm gonna copy it back here. And then we need to replace a bunch of stuff. So first connect this up to the true pin. And obviously we need to get all the left hand variables in here. So current weapon index left, ammo clip left, index left. So the ammo clip max, that's the same. It doesn't change between left and right. And then the index left again. There we go. Maximum doesn't change, but we do need to get the left hand index and the left hand clip size. And again for the index left. The reload difference, we can just keep that variable, that's not going to be an issue. And let's get all of this out of the way. So ammo stock is the same. Ammo index left, we need to plug that in here. Reload difference, there's no difference. And then ammo stock is the same. We have the index left again here and the clip left. for the index left. So I think I'm just gonna stop calling everything out because you get the idea. And you just need to replace everything that has a left variant and make sure that you keep the ammo stock and the reload difference as they were. So maximum, that's not changed. Get the index. And the clip left. Index left, stock, that's good to go. Then we can drag the index over here again. That's our reload difference. So then we have the ammo clip left. And that's the weapon index left. And the ammo stock stays the same. So we do need to make sure that we change out these functions for the left side. So update clip left. And update ammo stock left. And just swap them out. And then we need to do the same check again that we did before to see if we might be need to update the right hand stock as well. So we want to get the dual wield branch and check if our index for the left side is the same as the index for the right side. Equals weapon index normal. And if that's true, then we also want to update the normal ammo stock. So that's the ammo stock on the right side. No, not that one. And plug in the value over here. And that should be good to go. Okay, so I think we might have everything covered. So I'm gonna hit the play button and pray everything works. But I can pretty much guarantee you that I missed something along the way. So we're just gonna see what happens and troubleshoot it along the way if we need to. So everything is saved. Let's hit play. So at least everything is still loading, that's fine. I can still fire my weapon, I can ADS. So let's hit the X button to dual wield. So that kinda worked, it looked a little bit weird. So it doesn't really look like it's playing an animation, but at least it's dual wielding. So it looks like I cannot switch weapons because I do not have a second weapon set up. So let's get that out of the way first. So I'm going to go into my first person character. And over here at weapon inventory I have a pistol and a shotgun, but the shotgun doesn't have any dual wield. So I'm going to add my pistol and my rifle. And let's see what happens now. So I can dual wield, I can switch to my rifle on both sides. Although with the left side something is wrong. Okay, so there are a bunch of things that we need to fix. So when I fire, my entire clip is empty after shooting one round. And there's something wrong with the animations. So let me just dive into that and I'll get back to you. Okay, I think I got all of the issues figured out. So first of all, let's go to the take bullet from clip function, and I simply connected up the execution branch in the wrong way. So this should fix the emptying of the clip in one shot. Then if we go into the event graph and go to the switch weapon left function, there we need to make sure that we have the weapon index for the setup weapon node. I forgot to replace it with the left one, so If you also forgot, make sure that you correct the error. So this should be the left weapon index, and then to fix the animation issue we need to go to the animation blueprint. And over here I forgot to update the update animation curve function. So we did do the blend space, the animation idle and walk tracks, but we didn't do the animation track. So open the update anim curves function. And in here we are going to do the same thing as we did in all of the other ones. So simply add a branch in here to check if we are dual wielding or not. And that's this one. And if we are not dual wielding, we can return, and otherwise we're going to copy this stuff and paste it below. So make sure that we connect it up to the true pin over here. And connect this one up to the character again. So we want to get our animation translation for the left side. So animation translation left, and plug that in here. And we do have the variables for this. We created them at the beginning of the video. So the animation curve translation, make sure you replace those. And over here get the animation rotation for the left side, and replace the variables over here as well. And hook this back up to the return node. So this should fix most of our problems. So let's see what happens if we try and play this now. There we go. So we can still fire an ADS with our normal weapon, and if I switch to dual wielding, in this case the animations are playing, so that's nice. And if I want to switch my left hand weapon, I can do so. I can fire my left hand and reload it, and if I switch weapons it will also update to the other weapon, so now it's an automatic rifle. And I can switch the other side and reload over there as well. So I think most of the stuff is working. Okay, so here we have a small issue with the slide translation, copying from the left to the right gun, or the other way around, from the right to the left hand weapon. But otherwise I think we did pretty good. So let me quickly take a look at the slide translation problem, and then we'll probably wrap up this video because it's been way too long. And I'll probably just go into another video and fix a few of the small issues that we have, like finger animations, slide translations and things like that. So let's see, this is our normal weapon event. So I think we need to dive into this a little bit deeper, because we are setting the weapon slide translation over here, and the animation blueprint from the weapon actually looks for this variable. So we need to make sure that on the animation blueprint for our weapons, that we get a way in here to differentiate if we are the left or the right weapon. So for now I'm gonna leave it at it, and we're gonna have to deal with it. I'm gonna get back to you in another video to fix a few small issues. So thanks for watching. It's been a really long one, and I've been kind of looking up to recording this, but we finally got it out of the way. So I really hope you guys enjoyed and that it made sense for a little bit, although most of it was just copying and pasting, but whatever. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, and you're welcome to join the GameDev Raw Discord as well if you'd like to. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.